So in our gospel today, we see a very short version of the calling of the apostles, these 12 guys who came to follow Jesus. So what are some things you know about them? Who can tell me something about St. Peter the apostle? Yes, he was the first pope. Very good. What else do we know about St. Peter the apostle? Okay, he denied Jesus on the night of the crucifixion. That's really good. Yes, Beatrice. He was a fisherman. So yeah, he was a fisherman before he was an apostle. These are things that we know about him. Let's take another one. What are some things we know about the apostle Matthew? Do we know anything about Matthew? Bellamy, what do you know about Matthew? He was a tax collector before he became an apostle. Sean. He wrote one of the Gospels. Very good. Do we know anything else about Matthew? That's okay. He did those things. After the crucifixion, we believe he went to Ethiopia and started preaching there. And one of the stories about him is that he preaching about Jesus, the king's daughter became a Christian. And then the king got mad about that because he thought that Matthew was trying to take over. And so then Matthew was killed. Like Peter. How did Peter die? Does anyone know how Peter died? Zeke. He was crucified upside down like Jesus. So these are things we know about the apostles, big things that they did. Today we have a saint named St. Peter Claver, who also did some big things you might not really know about. Peter Claver was born in Spain in the 1600s. And then Peter got on a boat, sailed across the ocean to the New World, to South America, landed in Colombia. And the city in Colombia where he was a really big place for slave trading. And so what Peter Claver started to do is he would go to the port where the boats would come in, and he would be one of the very first people onto the boat. As soon as a boat would pull up, he would be in there with the people who were being enslaved. He would take care of them, help them if they were sick, give them food and water, and especially to start teaching them about Jesus. One of the things that we know about St. Peter is that he baptized 300,000 of these enslaved people that came through his town, which is pretty amazing. And so I want to think about this. These guys did these great things that we still talk about. When they were your age, let's say 10 years old, did they know they were going to do these things? No, they didn't know they were going to do these things. If you had sat down with 10-year-old St. Peter and said, okay, one day you're going to meet the Messiah, and he's going to put you in charge of the whole world, and you're going to start talking about him, and you're going to be, killed and crucified upside down, he would have thought you were crazy. He's just going to go be a fisherman. He's not going to do all of these things. He wasn't ready for that. Matthew would have said the same thing. If you had told him he was going to be a tax collector, but then he was just going to quit one day to go follow this random preacher, he would have thought you were crazy. Peter Claver, when he was 10 years old, did not think that he was going to go leave his family behind and go minister to people that he didn't even know existed. So how does that happen? How do we go from being your age and having no idea what's going to happen to being able to go do those amazing things? I think the answer is this. God calls us to do things. And when he calls us to do things, he gives us the courage to do them. All three of those guys, Peter and Peter Claver and Matthew, if you had told them when they were 10 they were going to do these things, they would have been scared. That would have been frightening. They weren't ready for that. But when God calls us to do things, he gives us the courage to do them. And now here's the most important part. Who else is God going to call to do something important? Okay? Who else is God going to call to do something important? Who do you think? Raise your hand if you think maybe God is going to call you to do something important. Right? Every one of us is right now being called by God to do things. And God's going to continue to call us to do things. So let's think about that. You can put your hands down. I'm going to grab, let's say, our 5th graders. Raise your hand if you're in 5th grade. All right, 5th grade, you can put your hands down. Okay? But now you can answer. Is it possible that someday God could call you to be a priest or to be a nun? Is that possible? Yes. Would it take courage to say yes if God calls you to that? Yes. So, if God calls you to be a priest or to be a sister, will you have the courage to say yes? All right, good. That's the right answer. Your parents are watching, so that's good. All right, how about our fourth graders? Where are our fourth graders? All right, you can put your hands down. So fourth graders, you're here, like these guys, like I said, maybe 10 years old, and you don't know what's going to go on. But if you think about your life in the future, maybe you think about you'll be a doctor maybe, okay, or something like that. Or maybe you want to be an NFL football player, maybe something that goes and makes a lot of money. You might have your thoughts about what you want to do, just like Peter and Matthew had their thoughts about what they were going to do. But maybe instead, God calls you to go and serve the poor, instead of doing something that goes and makes a lot of money and becomes famous. Okay? Is it possible that God would call you to go serve the poor someday? Yes. Would it take courage to go do that instead of the things you want to do? Yes. So if God calls you to that, will you have courage? Will you have the courage to say yes? All right, good. All right, I'm going to grab our 8th graders. They're sitting back here today. So 8th grade, raise your hand if you're in 8th grade. Maybe a few over here too. Okay, so 8th graders, you can put your hands down. Right? You're just about a year away from leaving us, about a year away from being somewhere else with new people and in a new place and a whole new environment. Okay? You are probably just a few years away from being around people who aren't making good choices. You're just a few years away from being around people doing things that you've been taught at St. Joseph you shouldn't do. If you're in those moments, is it possible that God would call you to say something to your friends who are making bad choices? Do you think that's possible? You might feel in the back of your mind, God wants you to say something or do something about this. Would that take courage to do that? Okay, so these 4th graders and 5th graders just said they have courage to do what they're going to be called to do. If God calls you to help your friends who are making the wrong choices, are you going to have the courage to say yes? Okay, are you sure? Okay, how about you 8th graders over here? Are y'all ready for that? Maybe is a fair answer, okay? And that's why we got to work to build that courage to say yes, okay? And now I'm going to ask the adults a question because we asked all them questions and they gave good answers, okay? So we're going to put our adults on the spot over here. So adults, is it possible that maybe sometime in your life, maybe even today, that you might run into someone who's having a hard time? Do you ever meet people that are having a hard time? Is it possible that in those moments God might call you to share your faith with them or to pray with them? Yes. Are there times that it might actually take courage to offer to pray to someone or to share your faith with them? Yes. So adults, they're watching you now. Will you have the courage, when you feel God saying, you need to speak to this person about me, you need to pray with this person, will you have the courage to say yes? Okay, good. Did they give the right answer? All right. These apostles in this story today, and St. Peter Claver, you remember today, they had a lot of courage. And when they were your age, they had no idea they were going to do these things. They couldn't even imagine these things. But when God called them, they had the courage to say yes. And God is going to be calling you. So today, as we come to Mass, as we come to this Eucharist to strengthen us, and as you go through life and you listen for God's call and you work to hear God's call, I hope you will have the courage, like these saints today, to say yes.